Hey there, startup founders and early employees. This is Jorge Soto from Sales for Startups. I could have it all if only you were here. Howdy, startup founders and early employees. This is Jorge Soto with Sales for Startups. Today, I'm happy to be hanging out with Craig Elias, who is really a phenomenal guy. How long have we been talking and kind of communicating, getting to know each other now?
I would say about 18 months. But we get to see each other at Dreamforce in a couple of weeks, right?
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. We got really lucky, and because we've been able to kind of interview phenomenal individuals like yourself and do so many different initiatives that we are now considered press, which is really crazy. I got an email from the PR folks at Salesforce, and they were like, "Hey, come to the press launch party." I was like, "Okay, that's."
I will be there.
I will definitely be there for sure. What I love about you and how you describe yourself as a sales guy that thinks as a marketer but acts as a salesperson, which is, I think, brilliant, because you really start to understand the power of building your brand as a salesperson, really marketing yourself as an individual, and even just as a business person, and all the things that you've done around social media, being considered one of the top social sellers or social influencers in the world, phenomenal. Your book, Shift Selling, which I want to get into here in a little bit. So yeah, actually that might be a really great segue into kind of giving the audience a little bit on your background and maybe some of the shift selling concepts.
Sure. So, I mean, here's the way this all happened for me. For about 20 years, I was just this lucky sales guy. I had this knack of just showing up in front of the right people at exactly the right time. And it happened for 20 years. And then one day it stopped. And it stopped because I worked for a company, they were called WorldCom back then, who admitted to conducting $11 billion in accounting fraud. So for the first time in my life, nobody would buy from me. So what I did was I took some holiday time, and I had a nice house along the river here in Calgary, and I took a month of afternoons and reflected on 20 years of success. When was I good? When was I great? When was I just unstoppable? And part of what I figured out is that my luck was more around timing, getting in front of people who recently became dissatisfied with their current solution. I'll call that status quo. But they weren't talking to anybody outside the company yet. And in the book, I call that a window of dissatisfaction. Unhappy, thinking of changing, but hasn't talked to anybody. And then I reflected a little bit more, and I realized that people leave status quo and enter the window because they experience a very specific event. And I was able to look back on all my 6, 7, 8-figure deals and figure out the specific event that actually made them leave. And I went, that's interesting. And then I actually had my third epiphany that summer, and that is the fact that for the first time in 20 years, what I've done is analyze my really big wins instead of analyzing my losses. And then when I searched on the internet, nobody was doing anything like this. So I actually started a company to trade information on these triggers, and it won a $1 billion idea contest, and I got a $1 million prize. So I spent a year on Yerba Buena Island, living there with an office right downtown San Francisco. That was cool. I became a dad. My wife plays French horn in Calgary, so I went back home. And I kept getting these requests to go teach all this stuff that I learned, so I decided to put it in a book. And that's basically what's in the book. The first 3 chapters is what did I figure out that summer? How do you get lucky? And then the last 4 chapters is basically what did I do for 20 years to make that happen? And if people want to copy the book, if they just send me a LinkedIn connection request, I will send them back an email with a link where they can go get the entire book for free.
And can they also tweet at you? What's your handle?
Yes. So I'm relatively lucky that my name is not overly common, but I mean, one of the tips I might give startup people is to read a book called The Zero Moment of Truth by a really smart guy named Jim Lisinski, and it's basically all about how do you get found when people are looking. And one of the reasons is there is a second guy named Craig Elias. I like to wear orange shirts. He's all in orange. And the reason he's all in orange is he's a murderer in jail in Pittsburgh. So when social media came out, the reason I actually got on social media was so that I could remove him from the results. So you type in Craig Elias, there's my Facebook, Twitter, SlideShare, all my profiles, and he's on other pages. So it's kind of funny the reason you do things and then something else comes out of it. But yeah, so I'm pretty much the Craig Elias on anything, whether it's Google Plus or LinkedIn or Facebook. I am, as I have to say, the Craig Elias. Forget the killer in Pittsburgh.
Well, it's really funny because that's nuts. My name is, I think, relatively unique as well, and although I'm typically introducing myself as George, it's really technically Jorge, and or with the Spanish accent, Jorge.
And I thought it was Jorge, so when you said George, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, you know, it's my father named me after George Harrison. He's from Cuba originally, and he's never actually referred to me as Jorge. In fact, my family in general has just never referred to me as Jorge. They've actually called me by nicknames, or referred to me as George. So I kind of have that flexibility, but I think visually to the Jorge or Jorge Soto is kind of cool, and I haven't actually haven't had any prison mates share the name that I'm aware of. However, I think I think if you search me, there's some like soccer player or something, some really cool guy. So anyway, that's my only claim to fame there.
So do you own the domain name that's your name?
You know what? I don't, but I do own Soto Ventures. And I've been using that, which is my handle as well. I've been doing that using that rather for a few years now. But I should look into Jorge.
Yeah, sometimes I have it. I mean, one of the things that I do, I own my own domain name. I have since 1997. And what I do today is I actually redirect it straight to my LinkedIn profile. So then if someone checks out CraigElias.com, it says, oh, this person checked out your LinkedIn profile, and I'll know who it was that came to check me out.
Ah, interesting. Cool. I had a quick question for you.
Yeah.
What struggles do you see early stage, B2B founders consistently encounter?
So this is a good question. The way I think about this, a lot of them I talk to confuse marketing with sales. A lot of them are reluctant to sort of push the envelope and to ask for something. One of the things, I even teach this to my son, if you want anything, all you have to do is ask. Just have to ask the right question. So don't expect someone's going to come to your website, figure out exactly why they want to become your customer, because what I've noticed is most people in their marketing use nouns to describe what they do, not verbs that describe the outcome of being a customer. So that's one thing. Second thing, I think you need to be really laser focused on who is your ideal client. Create an ideal client profile and pick very specific people, because one of the things I've learned is the best way to grow your business is through word of mouth. And that if you get a really good first customer or a really good second customer, you get a whole bunch just like your first or second customer. But if you're desperate and take anybody, you get a whole bunch of nobodies later on. Still there, George?
Yeah, I'm here. The internet has its hiccups, but we're good to go.
Cool. So that's my answer to the question.
What tips would you give an early stage, B2B founder, pre-revenue, maybe they have an MVP or something that kind of looks like a product in terms of doing and planning for sales?
So here's the first thing. If I was a founder of a tech firm, well, the first thing I would try and do is I try and enroll people, not sell to people. So what I try to do is I go to them and say, I've got an idea, I would love to get your feedback on the idea. You're going because maybe they want to be a customer, but you're going because they'll also give you really good feedback, and if they're senior and well-established, they'll point you in the right direction. It's kind of like Aaron over at Charlie App getting a chance to go meet T.A. McCann, who had something like Charlie, years ago, if you don't go out and start enrolling people and asking for help, you miss these really cool opportunities to learn. There is a magazine. There is an article I read. I think it was called 50 Cups of Coffee. It was on Inc. magazine. And it's basically, before you launch, take 50 people out for cups of coffee. And the first time you go for coffee, and I actually did this myself in '03, I went out for coffee. I took a guy who was pretty senior. I said, this is my idea for a business. I think I have these 3 problems. Do you have any ideas how to solve these 3 problems? And he gave me answers to those 3 problems. And I said, great, I really appreciate that. What problems do you think I have that we haven't talked about yet? And he would give me 3 more. And I take those 3, I go to my next coffee, right? I take the new 3, I say to that person, these are my 3 problems. How do you think I can solve these problems? What other problems do you think I have? And basically, over a span of 6 months, I took something that was a kernel of an idea, and I blew it up to something really big, so big that it won the $1 billion idea contest. But it started with almost like an MVP, and then enrolling, asking for help. And then when I finally came out, people said, well, come on, this is like .com. This has been done, or post.com. It's been done 1,000 times. And I said, no, go look on the internet. Nobody does this. Incredibly simple, incredibly powerful, but somehow people had just missed it. But it was the cups of coffee that got me there.
I love that. I love the concept you just brought up, enrolling people versus selling people early days. I think that's incredibly powerful.
Because if you're not selling somebody, they don't see there's any risk, and they open up the Rolodex. I mean, part of what happens when people come and see me, because I'm one of those guys in my town that knows a ton of people, they come see me, and I won't just say, hey, you should talk to George. I will pick up the phone. I will call George while I'm in front of this person and say, hey, George, do you have 5 minutes? I want you to talk to somebody. And I'll then hand the phone over to the other person, because sometimes they're too shy to pick up the phone. They go, oh, I'm just a startup, and he or she is really successful. Like, they're too afraid, they don't bother. So I just go, I'll do it for you. And once the first call is over with, it's easy, but the first one's hard.
I love your style. Everyone that I talk to that knows you, which is pretty much everyone in sales, is always bringing up how you reach out via phone, and I love that. I don't know if I mentioned that, I really learned how to sell, in my opinion, when I was selling books and CD-ROMs door to door when I was in graduate school, and then a bit after that. And there's just something about that personal touch, whether it's the phone or in person, that's just, you can't replicate via technology. Now, I'm not saying that, and I'm sure you would agree with me, that technology is not powerful, etc. But I love that personal touch. I just wanted to mention that.
Well, here's the thing I think is important. Part of what we're doing, which is good when we reach out in person, is we're, in some respects, sort of interrupting somebody. And we get their attention for whether it's 30 seconds, 2 minutes, or 5 minutes. You get someone's attention for 10 seconds on email. That's it. So it's a good way to have that back and forth dialogue. This whole enrolling thing, you can't do this through email. You won't have the same conversation.
I wanted to actually run an idea past you that I've been thinking about for a while. And you remember when we were cold calling via telephone, and we would encounter, voicemail after voicemail, etc. And then we figure out clever ways to leave voicemails to yield callbacks.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because one thing that kind of came to mind with email, and this is something I started doing maybe 6 or 7 years ago, was writing these very short emails that seemed more like text messages and seemed more like voicemails, right? And my point that I'm getting to is that it almost feels like, writing an email has to it's kind of like almost the new version of leaving voicemails, right? You need to craft this thing in a way that's going to elicit a response, and it's not really about reaching someone when they're, like a traditional phone call, when they're available and interrupting them. Do you agree with that? What are your thoughts around that?
Well, I'm always a fan. The more senior the people you're dealing with in the organization, the more value they place on brevity. So I'm a big fan of, I've seen some research, 2-word subject lines. 2 words. That's it. And then they go, well, what is that? And that gets them to open it. And once they open it, they'll read the first line. If the first line is compelling, they'll read the next 2 lines. You get to ask a question, and then they respond. Then they say yes or no. So I'm the same way. I'm a big fan of 2 words in an email subject. 1, ask a question, give some context, or say something, give some context, ask a question. And the shorter you make it, the better the response rates you get.
Awesome, awesome. You know, I love that. I don't want to take up too much of your time talking about email outreach and stuff like that, but I really love the concept. Quick question. You are going to be at Dreamforce coming up here in a couple weeks?
That is correct.
And how can individuals that want to learn more about shift selling, about your various tools and you know, consulting services and everything else that you do, how can they get in touch with you? And for some of our more you know, I would say brave readers or you know, audience members out there, how can they actually sit down with you around Dreamforce?
So here's the deal. First of all, I would say text me. Text is going to be the best way to reach me when I'm at Dreamforce. So my text, I'm still in North America, so that's a 1, of course, right? 403 is the area code. So 403-874-2998. 403-874-2998. And I'm a really expensive guy. So if you want a half hour of my time, it costs you a coffee. If you want an hour of my time, then it's lunch. But I'm only there for 3 lunches, and I'm already booked for 1. So if someone wants an hour, they better phone me or text me for lunch. But if they want to text me, we'll just book some time for coffee, and we'll spend a half hour. And here's what I'll do in that half hour. I'm not, what's the word I would use? I'm not arrogant enough to tell somebody what they should do in that hour. But what I like to do is I like to tell people what I think they should do. How do I say this? No, I would tell them what I would do if I was them. And then, sorry, I got distracted because I had a pop-up window and the meeting disappeared. Hold on. You still there, George?
Yeah, we're still here.
Okay, good. Let's keep going. Okay. No. Still there?
Yep.
Okay. I'm trying to find my camera, so I can't see myself or see you, so I'm just going to wing it from here.
You're looking good, Greg.
Any other questions you got?
No, I think that's all I got today. I'd love to have you back on salesforstartups.org, just kind of discussing maybe post Dreamforce, discussing some of the things that you learned, some of perhaps some of the events that you went to. That might be a lot of fun, and then certainly any advice you have for startup founders and their early employees related to sales and marketing.
Perfect. Awesome. George, a pleasure. I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Sounds good. And one last question. If anyone wants to check out your book or buy it, where could they find it?
Oh, good question. You can buy it on all the online stores, but if you want just an electronic copy, like a PDF, send me a LinkedIn connection request. You can have the soft copy, and I'll send you a link to it, and there's no charge.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Craig. Really appreciate it. I always love talking to you. You always leave me with a smile, and I'll see you at Dreamforce.
Cool. I'm looking forward to it. Have a great weekend.
You too. Take care.
Yeah.